As writers, we've all been there. We start a new story, certain this will be it, the brilliant idea that will take us through. For days or weeks, we pound out the words, thrilled by the shiny new world and the fresh characters, only to stop. We stare at the blank page and the dreaded flashing cursor, but nothing comes out. Our amazing new idea loses steam, and before we know it, we're starting over, or else stopping completely, our dreams of becoming a published writer evaporating like so much discarded paper. If this sounds like you, you're not alone. Some writers take years to crank out a rough draft, let alone actually editing or publishing the thing. For some writers, writing itself becomes a struggle, whether because of time constraints or a general lack of motivation. Writers can fall into a slump. More often, though, it's the story rather than the writing itself which the writer loses interest in. As writers, we like to write, yet we need to be attached to and engaged in whichever project we're working on. Most writers don't quit writing altogether. Instead, they keep starting over, so that they end up with 50 half-finished manuscripts, but nothing complete. It's not unusual to grow bored with an idea, or frustrated, but there are several reasons this could be happening. If it's your intention to write as a hobby, and nothing more, this isn't a big deal. But if it's your dream to complete a manuscript and publish it, either by yourself or through a traditional deal, it's crucial for you to identify why your projects are fizzling out. Are the ideas themselves lacking? Or could one of 4 factors be to blame? It's possible to regain passion for an older project and to maintain progress on a single story. But first, you have to address what's standing in your way. It's not enough to have a character you love or an exciting world. You have to lay the groundwork for your story, overcome your fears, and look after yourself. Before we continue, I'm Riley, and this is Otherworldly Fiction. On this channel, I rant about fantasy books, discuss characters and lore, share my bookish opinion, and offer the occasional writing advice. If any of that sounds like your cup of tea, hit that subscribe button. Posts are on Fridays. Losing passion in your writing or in individual projects is a common phenomenon for writers, but there are 4 reasons you may be struggling, and by addressing them, you can regain both your confidence and inspiration. You might be tempted to start a new story, but by addressing these 4 issues, you could reignite the spark for something you've already started. Number 1. Lack of preparation. I know pantsers are sick of hearing it, but outlines make a huge difference. As a teen, all I did was restart my stories because they had no direction. I'd come up with an exciting idea, and then my story would deteriorate as more exciting concepts came forward and started competing with each other. Plot threads trailed off, characters came and went like they were in a revolving door, and my stories became less interesting to me as they lost cohesion. Now, in fairness, pantsing can be a great way to generate the ideas themselves. If you're not sure what story you want to tell, sitting down to write without any preparation can allow you to discover a character's voice, play with your prose style, and learn about your world. Plus, writing in general is good practice. By all means, if an idea is calling to you, write the first couple chapters. Feel out your story and get your thoughts down. Then stop. You'll be tempted to continue, but once you have 2 chapters, this is the perfect time to outline. By this point, you should have a basic idea. At the very least, you should know who your protagonist is and have an idea of the world, whether it's an alternate fantasy universe, something which takes place on Earth, or anything in between. The problem with many pantsers is that they don't even want to try outlining. If pantsing works for you, that's great. But if you're continually restarting stories, or losing interest in your work, that could be proof pantsing isn't for you, at least not completely. While pantsing might carry you through the planning phases and give you a couple chapters you're satisfied with, it might be inadequate for you to finish anything. If you attempt outlining and it doesn't work for you, that's fair. Plenty of great writers are pantsers. It's a valid writing style. But you should experiment before you commit to any one form of writing, especially if you're struggling. As a kid, I thought I was a pantser too. Now, I swear by outlines, because for me, they're detailed but not to a stifling degree. Instead, I treat them as a blueprint rather than a step-by-step guide. I even change my outlines as I write, accommodating smaller subplots and ideas as they come. Plenty of writers sit somewhere in between, and these creators are called plantsers. They have a rough outline, but still largely create on the fly. In your case, your outline can be as detailed or as simple as you want it to be. You can plot out each scene, mapping a character's goals chapter to chapter and the dialogue they'll exchange, or you could have bullet points with no more detail than hero fights the dragon and gets poisoned. Even if outlines don't work for you, even at a basic level, some preparation can go a long way. For a start, figure out who your protagonist is. What are their basic traits? What are their likes or fears? What do they want out of life? Simply answering these questions can give you a story. If your hero wants to find love, but is afraid of being judged, these things in themselves can act as a catalyst. Fleshing out your hero's family and the world they live in can also anchor you in the world. By getting attached to the cast you've crafted and the magic system you've devised, you'll be more grounded in your story overall. Number 2, self-doubt. Sometimes it's not creativity we lack, but confidence. Writing is fun, but finishing a project has different implications. As long as we start over, everything remains perfect. When the story doesn't extend beyond a few chapters, we can pretend the rest of the story is brilliant. The shiny idea can remain unmarred in our heads, and the writing itself can be easily shut up to make room for the next idea. If we never finish, then we never have to face criticisms. If we keep starting over, we can avoid the less flashy but no less important step of evaluating and editing our stories. Editing isn't always fun. It can be satisfying, but first writers have to overcome the hurdle of admitting they aren't perfect. We already struggle with self-esteem, and appraising a completed work forces us to face our insecurities. Many writers will lose passion for a project because they're unsatisfied with what they've written so far. We look at those first 5 chapters and cringe. As we delve deeper into the story, the shortcomings in it become more obvious. We realize we introduced a character and then forgot them. The pacing becomes bogged down, plot holes emerge, and we lose confidence in not only ourselves, but the story, as it unwinds in all its imperfection. Mistakes will be most obvious at the midpoint, making it harder to continue because you'll feel like you're continuing to build a house on ground that's sliding out from beneath you. This is a good sign though. If you can see the issues in your work, you can correct them. Some writers edit as they go, but if you don't want to slow yourself down, make note of any problems you notice and then move on. Continue to write as if those problems have been addressed, and then go back and fix them when you're finished. Noticing mistakes isn't cheering, but it's great to have self-awareness because it enables you to improve your work. Acknowledge your inner editor, but don't be discouraged by it. The purpose of a first draft is to write, and nothing else. If you know any problems, include them in a notebook, but don't take them as a sign you're a bad writer. No writer ever turned out a perfect first draft, and you won't be the exception. Focus on the story and ignore the problems. You'll have plenty of time to untangle them later. For now, focus on what excited you about the story in the first place, and pretend the writing you've done is perfect. As a quick aside, be sure to hit the like button if you've enjoyed this video so far, so that others can enjoy it too. Number 3. Overwhelm. Maybe you lack time or space to create. You're brimming with ideas, and you have no problem outlining, but writing itself is challenging. It's exhausting, demanding, and time-consuming. You want to write, but who has time to finish a whole book? It's likely you have other commitments, be they school exams or caring for a child, and writing a book can feel like one more thing to do on top of a tottering to-do list. Life itself can be overwhelming, and after you take into account a day job, a social life, the need to sleep, and the free time you require to decompress, writing a book can be too much. Even if you don't have a staggering number of responsibilities, the actual act of penning a manuscript can be daunting. You have to build a world, flesh out characters, design arcs, connect subplots, outline, and then actually write the whole thing. Writing a book is a big deal. You have to figure out your protagonist's goals and misbeliefs, and then do the same thing with the love interest and the villain. You have to craft characters who are likable, or at least interesting. Then, you have to share all this work with other people and hope they don't hate it. Nobody ever said writing was easy. If it was, we'd all be doing it. And landing a spot on the New York Times bestsellers list would be as simple as doing the laundry. The fact is, writing a book is a lot of work, and you're allowed to feel overwhelmed. Writing every day might not be feasible for you, if you have plenty of commitments. And that writer who cranks out a new book every month probably doesn't have the same responsibilities as you do. Or if they do, they can afford to hire other people to handle them. The best you can do is break down the work into manageable chunks. Spend a Saturday afternoon developing a character or two. Then, spend another afternoon world building. When you're happy with your core cast and the world you've made, write one chapter. It doesn't have to be long. It doesn't have to be good. Just write that chapter. Then, if your outline is prepared, write another. The beauty of an outline is that it breaks every part of your story down into manageable chunks. Again, I'm not knocking pantsers, but outlines help not only your preparation, but your sense of overwhelm. As you follow an outline, you'll actually see how much progress you're making. If you're coming to the scene labeled midpoint, congratulations, you're already halfway through. It might take you 1 month to write that book, or 6 years. But if you can see yourself making progress, even a little, that's enough. Advice articles will tell you that you have to write every day if you want to be a serious writer, that you'll need to churn out 4 books a year to earn any money. But you should remember why you're doing this. Writing might not be your sole source of income. And if you're happy with your current job and circumstances, it doesn't need to be. If you reach a point where you can write every day, that's awesome. You'll be amazed how quickly your story comes together if you do. However, take the pressure off yourself. Only do as much as you're able. Write 300 words a day. Write a paragraph on the bus. Or write once a week on weekends. The truth is, most authors don't crank out 4 books a year. Sure, Stephen King is prolific, but just look at George R.R. Martin. That guy needs a decade plus to finish a Game of Thrones novel, and that hasn't stopped him from creating. Everyone works at a different pace, and breaking your novel down into smaller steps, focusing on only one scene or chapter at a time, can't prevent you from feeling overwhelmed, especially if you give yourself grace to acknowledge and work within your limits. Reason number 4, burnout. When all else is going for you, it might be burnout that causes you to lose passion for a project. Maybe you followed all the advice, you've outlined your story, you've given yourself room to fail, and you've maintained a consistent writing schedule, but you're still dissatisfied. If you've done all of the above, and you're still not enjoying the writing process, this could be a sign you're burned out, either from writing or life in general. Maintaining a writing routine is important, but forcing yourself to continually work when you have no passion can do more harm than good, to not only your mental health, but your story. After all, if you're disconnected, that will show in your work. Your chapters might read as rushed or underdeveloped, and who wants that? Sometimes the best thing for your writing is to take a break. You might not have lost passion for your project. Instead, you might just need a break from it. In this case, starting a new project, if you're feeling the drive to do so, might not be a bad thing, because you'll give your mind time away. The trick is to not make the break indefinite. After you've played around with a new idea for a few weeks or a few months, return to the old one. You might be surprised to find you've come up with new ideas since, and you could fall in love with your old story all over again, especially as you view it with fresh eyes. Some writers make a point of juggling 3 or more stories simultaneously. They might alternate between projects, writing book A on Monday and book B on Tuesday. Alternatively, they might have each project at a different stage, one in the planning phase, another being written, and the third being edited. It's not uncommon for authors to have at least 2 series on the go. Just look at Sarah J. Maas. She's gearing up to release the 3rd Crescent City book, but her ACOTAR series is still ongoing. Holly Black likewise jumps between projects. She wrote the Book of Night, only to return to the world of the Cruel Prince in the form of the Stolen Heir duology. It's okay to have more than one book or series on the go. It will keep you excited and inspired, while giving you time away from projects you've become too familiar with. Of course, you might need a break from writing completely, especially if your life has become hectic. If you've become burnt out from a demanding day job or a restless toddler, you're allowed to step away from the keyboard. Your mind may just need a refresh. This could be as simple as a walk outside or a trip to a new restaurant, or as complex as a month-long holiday. In the time away from writing, you can still hone your skills. You can watch videos and read blogs on the craft of writing, as well as consume books related to authorship. Moreover, you can regain inspiration simply by rereading your favorite books or binging the films and TV shows you love best. If that means another Buffy the Vampire Slayer marathon, go for it. Consume the content that inspires and inspired you, and let your mind rest. Your story will still be there when you get back, and it will be a better story for having the commitment of someone who's rested and eager. If you need to, have a holiday. Unplug from social media. Visit your friends and family. Don't forget to actually live your life, because our stories are inspired by the world around us, no matter how fantastical. Your writing will improve from your taking a break. Moreover, you won't come to resent your project. Instead, it will remain fresh and engaging, enabling you to finish. In conclusion, the life of a writer is never easy. Even famous writers can become overwhelmed. Fame, fortune, and experience haven't stopped George R.R. Martin from becoming intimidated by the 6th Game of Thrones book. there are numerous reasons why you might be struggling to see one project through, whether it's a lack of preparation, doubt in the quality of your work, overwhelm in the face of finishing a whole draft, or simply being burned out. There are plenty of reasons you could be struggling to commit to a project, though each of these can be addressed, either through outlines or time away from writing itself. You can regain passion for your older projects. Be gracious with yourself. Create a schedule, but one that's feasible. Develop your work before you start, and take time away. Writing will never be easy, but by addressing these issues, it can be easier. Give yourself room to plan, believe in yourself, and rest, and your writing and the books you've started will thank you. Plus, you might finish a manuscript before you know it, if only because of the confidence and inspiration you've allowed yourself. What are your biggest hurdles to finishing a manuscript? Did any of these challenges resonate with you? Do you have any tips for getting yourself back on track? Sound off in the comments. And if you've enjoyed this video, like and subscribe. Thank you for watching, and happy writing.